At this time, we're going to have the three bodies call their meetings to order. First, for City Council, we call to order this special meeting of the governing body of Navasota City Council on the 14th of November, 6 p.m., council chambers. And a quorum is present. P&Z.
This is the regular meeting of the Navasota Planning and Zoning Commission for November 14th, 2024, and all commissioners are accounted for.
Economic Development Corporation.
Yes, sir. So, as well, a regular meeting for NEDC. We do have a quorum. We do not have the entire commission.
Item 2 is remarks of visitors. I'll just call your name, and if you would come to the podium, and you have a 3-minute time limit, please. Kathy Cave Wells. Excuse me?
We forgot the pledge.
The pledge, do the pledge.
Okay, I'm trying to save a little time, but will you lead us, please?
I will. Heavenly Father, 3 of our groups in Navasota have come together as well as focused on our mission. And number 2,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, again, this is the remarks of visitors. Kathy Wells, state your name and address, and 3-minute time limit, please.
Hello, Kathy Wells, Kathy Cave Wells. I live in Whitehall, but I own the home at 403 Holland, and I am the chairman of the Two Rivers Heritage Foundation. I'm also on the board of the Grimes County Historical Commission, and I'm here because, as you all know, historic preservation is extremely important to a lot of the people in this town, a lot of the people that were born and raised here, and a lot of the people who came here later in life, like me. And so that part of part of what I love Navasota the most is its treasure of homes and buildings, and what the city is doing to the downtown, and what the merchants are doing with their buildings. And so it's all coming around, and it's being very beautiful. And we just want to, of course, I'm here about the overlay, Washington Avenue overlay, and so asking that in advance that the city and the 2 commission, or whatever y'all are on, committees, keep that in mind about the number of people that live here or from here or came here because of the beauty of this town, that things stay not as they are, but that the beauty be kept, and that we not infringe upon what we want on its perimeters any more than it has to. Thank you.
Rob Weeks.
Hello, good evening. Rob Weeks, address 11235 County Road 179, just down the road in Beat Ice, and been here in the county for the last 10 years. Wasn't raised here, but got here as quick as I could. And that's like 2 types of people in Texas, right? Texans and the ones that got here as quick as they could. Here to talk about the overlay and economic development, kind of aspects. My point in being here is my wife and I both first responders here local, local people that are trying to start businesses, and we're investors, so we're investing in a startup business and multiple locations, the first of which we'd like to actually be here in Navasota. And so along those lines, we've been going through the special use permit. We've been going through the overlay, exception, kind of paperwork process. And what that's done is, made this very difficult and cumbersome to do business development here. What we intend to do is open a two-sided business. One is tattoos and tattoo removal. There's kind of two types of people. Some types of folks that say, hey, I got this tattoo. Maybe it was from 30 years ago and I just hate it now. Come see us. We can take care of that. Some people say, well, I'm a very artistic, creative, type individual, and I want to commemorate something in my life, or a win, or a birth, or a death, or a something. Yeah, come see us. We can do that too. But in doing that, we're in that East Washington overlay district looking at property, and it has been just a very difficult process. It hasn't been an inviting process to a local person, right here in Grimes County, trying to invest, in a small, individually owned business. We are not AutoZone, okay? We're not going to do anything to the property. We just want to come in and be able to work here in the community, grow with the community, be a good corporate citizen, bring some evening economic development. Evening hours are, I think, something that are beneficial. I think, there's mention of the really great kind of budding restaurant district that's, come up downtown by the tracks. They need some companion businesses to bring people here in the evenings, right? We're one of those. And so with that in mind, we're looking to bring clean, modern, friendly type business into Navasota. But our experience thus far has been, not very welcoming. It's been sort of a lot of administrative overhead and paperwork. And so why I'm here with my last 15 seconds is just to kind of gauge from the councils, how serious are you about business development? And what do you plan to do to make it easier for new types of businesses to come and do business here in your community? Because we'd love to do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Connie Clements?
Good evening. I want to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission first and City Council for approving the Starbucks site plan that was amended to have the 4-inch rollover curbs in the drive-through. My concern about drive-through safety was prompted by that inescapable drive-through Jack-in-the-Box, which on a good day will literally have a captive audience. Since the approval went through, I followed Starbucks construction, and about a month ago I was pleased to see that Starbucks did what they agreed to do, and that was to install the rollover curbs. And while the lane layout isn't perfect, the rollover curbs will greatly enhance customer safety in the long run. At previous meetings, I've stated that other Starbucks constructed in the last year and a half in growing small Texas towns like Navasota do not box in their drive-through customers. I visited them. Giddings, Port Lavaca, Commerce, just to name a few. And I've been told it's a developer's trend, and the implication is that we can't do anything about that. But I disagree. It's only a trend if we don't say no, and Starbucks proved we can ask for a change that benefits our residents and visitors, and developers and contractors will listen. So wrapping up, I'm requesting that the city adopt some kind of drive-through standard so architects know up front, before the design is even drawn, what we expect in the way of drive-through safety in Navasota. Thank you.
Sharon Hudson?
Hello, Sharon Hudson, 7404 Masters Drive. I'm a citizen of Navasota. I feel like I'm new here and I wish I'd gotten here many years ago. Just a few quick points tonight for having the economic business group and our planning and zoning committee. One of my questions was, I'm not sure why the meeting was set tonight. I actually had planned to be somewhere else and regarding a Grimes County event. So that would be a false assumption maybe made that the citizens of the city of Navasota also would not be interested in things going on in Grimes County. I did make the choice to be here because I love the beauty of the drive once we get past Walmart, which we need, just the drive down Washington Avenue. So it brings me to my second statement or question on the, we've already met with planning and zoning, and they listened to the citizens, and so planning and zoning said, hey, we're going to send this to city council. We say no, this is probably not a good idea. Then city council met, and we all came back in again, and all the citizens spoke. And many, many citizens to the point where city council said, well, okay, regarding this AutoZone, this is probably not a good idea. And then here we are again, and it looks like we're going to be having a meeting discussing the East Washington overlay. And I would just like to say that my point has not changed. I feel like that is a beautiful drive in the old homes, and I do want business in this city, and I do want to encourage city council, business economic group, the planning and zoning to use whatever means and positivity that you have to continue to let them know that there are other places. The citizens of Navasota, we drive up and down Washington, but that's not our only spot. We go up and down LaSalle, we go around 105, both ends, we do Highway 6 bypass. There are so many other places that we would be very willing to visit if it was a store that was of our needs, and we would still welcome business. We just ask that East Washington stay beautiful with those big, huge trees and our old homes that several were just in our Lanterns and Legends event in October. Thank you.
Mayor, before we can continue, we have another EDC member that came in, Kathy Prescott. If she can come up to the front. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I need to call on
Planning and zoning.
planning zoning, Mr. Chairman, to address one item you have on your agenda specific.
So we're going to take consideration and possible action on a minor plat application submitted by John Matthew Fabian for the purpose of subdividing a part of Block 86 into two separate lots. The property affected is located at 105 Willie Street, Navasota, Grimes County, Texas 77868, legally described as Camp Subdivision Block 86 PT.
Mr. Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission, to briefly summarize, the proposed replat is along Willie Street. There's about a half an acre tract there that's unplatted currently. The owner is intending to plat the property into a formal subdivision plat and also subdivide to allow for the construction of eventually 2 single-family homes or maybe higher densities, just depending. B1 is very open in that regard, so by subdividing it, it'll allow at least 2 new homes to be built here. I'm not sure if Mr. Fabian is here tonight.
Yes.
Oh, he is. In case y'all have any questions, sorry, John, I can't see that far. But again, the minor plat has been reviewed per applicable subdivision regulations and B1 standards. Since this property is in B1, Normally, minor plats are done administratively. However, our zoning ordinance has it where if there's a subdivision in B1 standards, it has to be approved by Planning and Zoning Commission. So the final copy of that plat is in your packet. And again, if you have any questions, John or myself can answer.
This is Todd Wisner, Planning and Zoning. Lupe, could you discuss these pieces of land that are marked as apparent residuals and what exactly that means to the platting?
Yes, that's a great question. I had the similar question when the surveyor first brought it. Because it is still in tract form, tract goes all the way back almost to the Texas land records. So when a surveyor is doing a subdivision plat, they go all the way back to ground zero. Actually, I talked to one of the surveyors, and he actually found one of the original land grant titles going all the way back when Texas was formed. So a part of that is sometimes it's not 100% clear. It's kind of like putting a puzzle piece together in the dark. You can kind of find all the pieces sometimes, and sometimes it'll work. Sometimes it may not. But this is just a residue of the adjacent tract that at some point was owned, or the boundaries were within the new boundaries of this lot, but now it's left over basically. It's like an old line drawn in the sand, and now we're making new bold lines around it. But it's just a piece of a previous tract that was probably subdivided not through the subdivision process, maybe just a meets and bounds simple deed. But that's all it is. It's just referencing a previous division of land that was not a plat.
Ethan Barczyk, Planning and Zoning. I move that we approve the minor replat application submitted by John Matthew Fabian for the purpose of subdividing a part of Block 86 into two separate lots. Property affected is located at 105 Willie Street, Navasota, Grimes County, Texas 77868, legally described as Camp Sub Block 86.
Oh, Dia Copeland, I second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Barczyk and a second from Commissioner Copeland to approve the replat. Any further discussion? All in favor of the replat signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as introduction and for information, this is a workshop session of the joint of the bodies that are here of the Navasota Economic Development Corporation, the City of Navasota Planning and Zoning Commission, and the City Council. And it's for discussion between those bodies and is not an action item. So there is no action that will be taken tonight on anything. You can see it on the agenda. There is no action to be taken. It's again for discussion between those bodies, so that, and the reason they're all being involved in it is because this particular item addresses not only historic preservation, but also economic development and just the overall plan and overall direction of the City of Navasota. I'm going to call on Mr. Diosdado to give some background on what brought us here.
Sir, thank you, Mayor. So just to briefly summarize the current item. So over the last several years, multiple zoning change requests and development plans for commercial businesses have been requested and ultimately denied for properties in the overlay district. Following the most recent denial, the AutoZone project
of the AutoZone project, members of Planning and Zoning Commission and Navasota EDC requested a joint meeting with council to discuss economic development goals related to the overlay district. And so again, we've had multiple applications in the last 5 to 6 years. Most of those have resulted in a denial of their request. And so following this most recent one, both boards just felt it may be appropriate to get in the same room and have an opportunity to deliberate the standards, what they are, what the process is. I know Rob mentioned that administrative process with the development plan and overlay district. Well, that's all built into the ordinance. Now, it's built in for a reason to go through that process. That's how council intended at the time. But all of these things are up for discussion amongst the three groups, and their pros and cons and things that whether there's changes warranted or not. Right? That's the discussion tonight. And as you mentioned, Mayor, there is no action. There is no changes. If there are any changes, those changes would have to go through the public hearing process, public notice. A lot of people would get a lot of letters in the mail if that were to happen. And so again, this is just a conversation. Now a little bit of history on the overlay district, and Bernie, I'm glad you're here because I know you know a little bit more about. You probably can go into detail, but just a brief overview. My understanding from looking at the language of the ordinance and from past conversations, the overlay district it had two primary objectives. Number one was to preserve the architectural character of East Washington. As many people have mentioned tonight, it is a beautiful corridor. And then two, and probably more so than I guess the driving factor behind the ordinance, was there's large Victorian and other architectural style homes within the overlay district, and so creating the overlay allowed those larger homes to one day be used as a business because of their maintenance costs, the cost of just upkeep and things of that nature. Allowing a business in those larger homes would mean that they would probably stick around a lot longer, right? And that's kind of what the intent of the overlay was. And then one recent point that was raised about discussions of the overlay district was what about the commercial businesses that are already in the overlay district, right? I mean, I frequent Dairy Queen. We all know where that one is. It's right dab smack in the middle of it, Arlen's. And so a discussion to be had maybe is to say what about the existing commercial businesses, and what would happen if those sites or those stores shut down. You know, the way the ordinance reads now, if there's an underlying commercial zone, then that underlying commercial zone can continue with a new owner. They just have to go through the development plan process, as Mr. Weeks mentioned, not you, Jason. And so, again, tonight it's just a discussion about the regulations that are in place now. If you'll have any questions about those, staff put together a map that gives you a high-level view of the boundaries of the overlay district, what uses are there that are commercial, non-residential, which are residential, and then just some quick facts about the overlay. And so there's approximately 60 properties in total. 20 of those properties are zoned B1, general business, so that's about 33%. 19 commercial, non-residential uses / buildings, right? So out of those 20 properties, 19 of those areas are currently non-residential structures. And then there's 38 residential buildings in the overlay. And the average property value within the overlay district is $398,000. And so again, I guess we'll open it up for discussion amongst the various groups. And as the mayor mentioned, the public comments were at the beginning of the meeting, addressing the concerns about overlay and other issues, and so now it'll be a deliberation between the three groups. So,
Yeah, and just a point of information that this overlay was established, it was hard to believe it, 14 years ago, and so you can only imagine how things have changed over that short period of time. So that's something to just kind of keep that in mind. And again, to address Ms. Hudson's comment earlier about why is this coming back again, well, it's a lot broader, being brought up a lot broader, and trying to involve the groups or the entities that actually are having to. When someone comes to you with an application, you have to address it. So, you know, it's best that all these entities be involved because they're the ones that are making the decisions and representing the community. So, yeah. And again, the reason that this has even come up is because of the comments and the at that meeting that she referred to. So a lot of things were brought up that night, and there are obviously more than one side to everything. So we'll bring it together. Not sure how to start.
Yeah, I'll start, Mr. Mayor. Ethan Barczyk, Planning and Zoning. From my point of view, it's difficult I'll speak for myself. I don't know if others agree, but you know what, we don't have much communication between our group and council collectively, nor with economic development. So we have items brought to us, let's just take the AutoZone path, where, you know, I don't know if we're not given, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we're not given, I feel, more information as to the pros and cons from the economy standpoint, of how it would effectively be beneficial in that location versus other commercial properties that may or may not be available. So I know me personally, I don't have a very good understanding of how we reach out to businesses or businesses reach out to the city in order for us to work closely with them to find a location that suits what the city's desire is for specific areas that also adapts to that retailer's needs. So I asked the question, and I've only had to do it once so far, is if we wanted anything to go there, what would it be? Just talking about that one spot. But I think that could apply to every other lot down Washington. So for me, it just puts me in a situation where I'm kind of confused because I don't know what's happening on EDC versus what's happening here, and if there's a struggle on both or how things are happening. So this is beneficial for me because I spoke with another member of EDC and we agreed that something like this would make more sense so we can all come to the table together and just talk about theories of what we see as development increases or the need for development increases in town.
Todd Wisner, Planning and Zoning. I'm looking at this from the ordinance standpoint. We have an ordinance that has very specific language, and I'm not even sure how the AutoZone can even get as far as it did, except for the fact that they have a business model, they have site people that pick a site, and then the gentleman that came and talked probably got paid no matter if he could land it or not, but that was his job, was to bring it to the council. But we have use restrictions, and they're very specific, and nowhere in the use restriction list does it even glint at the fact that something like an auto parts store could be put into the overlay district. I feel for Mr. Weeks, and when we look at the language of professional office uses consisting of professional consulting services in law, architecture, design, engineering, consulting services, accounting, insurance, counseling, dentistry, medicine, I think he could have a legitimate argument as well, because we've got art studios and sale of arts. And I think he would have a much better standing through the language of the ordinance of putting his kind of business in the overlay district than we would the AutoZone. So our responsibility is to make sure that things are done as per ordinance. And if you want to change the kind of businesses that are there, then you certainly have to change the language that's in the ordinance.
Yeah, and again, that's like reason I mentioned that it was established 14 years ago and times have changed in lots of things, but the reason I brought that up was because it's obviously needs to be discussed in more detail so that we may want to make changes to it, because again, there are, as times change, we kind of have to address that.
No, Kevin Clark, Economic Development Corporation. The reason why we asked for the meeting, the city staff spends considerable time and the EDC spends considerable money recruiting businesses to come here. And those businesses have their own criteria of where their location needs to be. We can't pick that for them. None of us, I'm speaking for myself, but I don't think anybody on the EDC wants to see the charm of Navasota go away. I don't think we want to see anything happen to the Victorian homes that are in that center of that overlay district, but the outside edges of it, where those homes aren't historical. I don't think there's anything there over 60 years old. And I mean, what we're talking about is basically 8 houses, maybe moving it down to Judson Street, where the Victorians start. That gives us a little leeway to get businesses to come in there, but still maintain the charm.
Lucy Ybarra, NADC. So I think one of the focus that we ask everyone to consider is we're not saying, like Kevin said, we're not saying to lose everything, but we do recognize that there has to be an adjustment. I know that NEDC has had the conversation multiple times that we do not want to become a community that consistently denies development. And we could be at that risk. Now, does AutoZone put us at that risk? No, guys. Nobody start burning the stakes. I think we just need to be wise on what we turn down. Is AutoZone a great fit for this? Absolutely not. But we're not just talking AutoZone. We're talking a tattoo parlor, like Mr. Weeks might want to bring in. Not you. We are talking maybe if it's something that doesn't necessarily fit with item 1, 2, and 3 of the overlay. I do think that NEDC as a whole, as a collective, will agree that we need to look at the district and say, are these homes do they all need to stay within the historic overlay? Does the entire stretch of map need to stay as it is, or can we adjust to allow some movement, some growth that's reasonable, that does boost us economically, but then we still maintain the charm as well? So, and I think that's our group as a whole.
I would just point out from my perspective, owning a residence within the overlay district, I think that we were late to the game in getting this ordinance established, and probably should have been done 60 years ago. But we have to be focused on what we're looking at 50 years from now. And I think to say from Post Oak to downtown is an area that we're going to protect is great. I think if you move that line, then in 10 years, some new folks come in and say, well, we should just move it just a little bit further because that next house can go away. So I think that we have to have this in order to protect one of our most valuable assets, and that is our main Washington Avenue. And we listen to many folks that come in here and say, we moved to your area because it was beautiful, it was charming, it was this, it was that. Well, it's because we have something like this that says, no, you're not going to put just any kind of business within the historic overlay district. And so I think it's very important. Do we miss out on some opportunities? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of, other than one other option that we turned down, besides that one piece of property, in the last 10 years, that came and said, oh, I really want to change this into a daycare or whatever it was. So I think it's very important, and while there should be tweaks, and we should always go back and review ordinances, I think the idea was smart. I think it was late, and I think making changes to that to reduce the section would be harmful for our city in the future.
John Walla, Planning and Zoning. I personally live in the commercial overlay district. I mean, I have a house there. The property listed, that we're always talking about with the Taco Bell and the AutoZone, a lot of individuals said it's not a historic home, but it was built, it's 50, 60 years old. If you had a car that was 50 or 60 years old and it was in a good shape, would that be considered a classic? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so just because we're saying it's not old now doesn't mean it's going to be old later, and someone would like a 1950s ranch home. My architectural style is I like a Victorian home, and I own one in this district. and I have a personal stake in it because I love my house, and the reason I bought the house and the reason we settled in Navasota was for exactly what you said. We have a charming community, and commercial creep is something that I know that this committee on planning and zoning is very sensitive to. And I'm with you, Mr. Fultz, like when you said, if we budge this, then that's just going to move it a little bit further down the line, and the next one, and the next one. Well, we set a precedent. And I think the precedent should be set was Navasota is very concerned and dedicated to the historical and the overlay district to keep that charm. And when people come and they want to get this thing, it's like, man, that's not going to be easy sell for you. You know, we do have other places for businesses for that. I own a business out on Business 6, and there's a lot of place for development there where, you know, an AutoZone would have been perfect fit for out there. You already have, you know, O'Reilly's going out there. You know, businesses like to clump around businesses. You know, you always see Home Depot, and man, there's a Lowe's pretty close to it. AutoZones are the same way. We have places for them. Just because they want a particular spot doesn't mean that we should grant that to them if it's going to affect the character and overall quality of Navasota, especially the drive coming in.
So Ethan Barczyk, Planning and Zoning. Regarding the AutoZone thing, it's my understanding they're already in talks developing a new site off LaSalle.
Yeah.
So I don't think we lost that because we said no. I think that piece of property is prime real estate, yes, but then you know always go to, well, let's say yes, and then the next property wants it, and the next one, and then we're all just done. So I don't know. I'd love to know the information of how many we have lost due to a board saying no. But I truly believe if they want to be here and do business here, they'll find a spot to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Gia Copeland, Planning and Zoning. You know, we do have 3 other gateways into Navasota that, you know, could be made more attractive. Yes, Washington Avenue is quite beautiful, but why don't we focus on those other gateways and make them beautiful too? And once we do that, then it drives business downtown, which is what we want. And so, you know, just harping on Washington Avenue is not serving all of our city. And so let's focus on the other areas as well. You know, both ends of LaSalle, the area coming in from Brenham, they can all support businesses in those areas. And then we're driving business downtown, which is what we want to do anyway.
Yeah, and I know that the bodies here know how the overlay is worded, because it does have a fairly extensive list of allowable uses. But again, I don't know how much the public is aware of that, but I mean, y'all all know because you have the document, but that's just to point that out.
Yeah, and Ethan, Planning and Zoning, I think if we ever did change the overlay district, then we definitely need to set sign guidelines, color guidelines to blend in with how it is and not have, you know, red and yellow Burger King and all the way down the road. It needs to be more attractive and pleasing to the aesthetic of that drive.
Lucy Barrett, NADC. So I think we also need to address, while this ordinance or these documents may be 14 years old, the establishment of, under Section E, use restrictions for 1, 2, and then continued on, was because we identified a need for the particular services that these businesses would offer. So we said, hey, we need things like professional services. We need things like downtown restaurants. We need things that are going to provide services that the city of Navasota was currently lacking. For the record, not a fan of AutoZone. We don't necessarily need that right now. And that may sound foolish coming from my position within the city. However, we are provided great services through O'Reilly and Napa. Our constituents, our community, they have those services met currently. I think if we're considering or pursuing changing these guidelines, we need to go back to the original thought process, which happened back in 2010, that they identified a need of services that were suitable to the area. And that has to be the forefront, the thought of what we're doing if we change this again. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir because I know Lupe thinks this way as well. I know a lot of you guys are Navasota natives or Grimes County natives or moved here as fast as you can, whatever it is. We just have to keep in mind that we can't say, well, we're going to change it, we're going to do signage, and that makes sense. Well, it doesn't make sense. Maybe we don't need another restaurant in that historic district because we're taking away from the ones that have worked so hard to be established here now. So and I'm not saying that that's exactly what we need, but, have that thought process that if we're going to change policy, if we're going to change the development of what we're allowing, then it has to be reasonable about what the current need is. Does a bar fit in this part of the area? No. A tattoo shop, and Mr. Weeks, if you're still here, definitely not saying anything against your business. I have tattoos myself. Does it fit in this area? Not necessarily. Does a professional service like a dentistry or possibly a daycare or an early childhood education training service like Champions or something like that fit? Absolutely.
Or an optician that we don't have.
Yes.
And I just will point out, I was not there for this, but I don't think that's what this means.
Yeah.
I think that the point was, let's find people that can go in the houses so they don't have to tear down a house or tear down the building. These were people that an art studio could fit in the Horlock house really easy because, it's great. And a doctor's office with only 4 doctors because the houses would have 4 rooms potentially or something like that. So I don't know that it was, this is the need that we have. It was, this is what would fit best in historic homes.
But the thought process.
That was part of it because I was involved in it. That was part of it. Hers was also part of it. But it's also very simplified in my mind. It was, when a house is torn down, I don't want to see a barn going up. That's about as simple as I can put it. That was my take on it at the time.
There are a couple points on this. One of them is that the consideration for what could go in there was not based on the need for those services. It was based on the appearance that would be left over when the business was there, if the business was there. So you didn't want something, if you notice the regulations all say that the parking will have to be in back of the establishment and no signs. So it preserved the atmosphere. We have businesses on this stretch, but if you just drive in with an open mind, it's an enjoyable drive. It's an enjoyable ride. It's beautiful. And the things that are there, some of the businesses that are there, they don't impinge on you that much. At least for me, I drive down there and hardly notice the businesses. But the fact that all of these businesses want to be in this area shows what a wonderful, preserving it is really worthwhile type thing. We have business zoning on just about all our major thoroughfares. Well, there's plenty of room for people to go in there. There is no reason that anybody has to go there except that it's the nicest place in town to be. And if they go there, it's not going to be the nicest place in town. I didn't mean to shut everybody down.
We're speechless. We're speechless.
You brought up this. Randy Peters, Chairman, Planning and Zoning. You brought up the zoning map, Lupe. I know council and we are very familiar with it. Maybe the EDC is not as familiar with our zoning map, and we can look at the 4 entryways into Navasota.
Thanks, Randy. I think as somebody already mentioned it, the rest of the corridors coming into Navasota, the primary corridors, they're all zoned either B1 general business, which is retail businesses 50,000 square feet or less, or B2, 50,000 square feet or larger. So that is, I think Dia, you mentioned that is accurate, that all the other corridors including even Piedmont 3090 that heads to Highway 6. They're all zoned B1 or B2 general business. The only one that has some residential still touching that frontage is East Washington, and it almost mirrors the overlay district. Now there are plenty of, now I say plenty, 20 properties in the overlay district that are B1 general business. So for example, one good example to note is next to Dairy Queen. I know that there's half of a house there left, but if that probably goes away, if it's not fixed, then you're going to have a vacant lot with B1 zoning and overlay district zoning. So what that means is, since it's a topic of discussion today, anything that's allowed in B1 can go there. It just has to meet the overlay district requirements. So if, I don't know, Dairy Queen's competitor, if a Taco Bell wanted to go next door to Dairy Queen, they would have to build their parking lot behind the building, meet all of the overlay district requirements. Versus if it's a vacant lot with residential zoning, then you can build a house or the uses that overlay district allows. So, but yeah, to your point, Randy, the rest of the corridors are B1, and overlay is unique in the sense that it has residential and overlay.
What the EDC hears from businesses that want to come here, I think, is they have certain requirements, though, traffic counts and things like that, that are not available on those corridors. So, and to your point, Josh, it's very hard anymore for a business to move into a house. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not going to see that anymore.
Well, except it just happened to us.
Do what?
I said, except it just happened to us.
Well, it happened to you, yeah, but you've got a historical home that's never going to be touched, and you've got a family that wants to keep that home intact. So some of those other houses, it's very difficult for a business to take a house and turn it into a business. So I think we need to remember that. But, and as Lucy said, I don't think anybody wants to see an auto zone there. But maybe we can adjust our architectural standards or something to make it where they have to build something that looks nice, but it doesn't necessarily have to look like a house.
John Walla, Planning and Zoning. I know in the historical district, we can, by the state law, that we can put stipulations of, what the building facade can be and things like that. Construction techniques have to match the buildings next to it, things like that, to keep up the appearances. Now, one thing that I'm not sure of is in the overlay district, especially with the Texas law, is that something that we can stipulate?
Yes, architectural standards are still something you can enforce. Yeah, through the overlay or without the overlay. Architectural standards are still, there's still a lot of discretion there from the state level. What the state recently removed was building materials, and so you couldn't say it has to be a brick building. In the overlay you still could because it's a historic overlay, but anywhere else in town you can't regulate materials, but you can regulate the look of something.
Yeah, I keep thinking that we've lost control over everything else. And we can certainly say, all right, well, let's just give this up and it'll be, Navasota, new Navasota. I don't think I'm willing to do that. I think we have a reason. We have a community where people come because we are unique and we are different and we are keeping our historic charm. That's what we have to be focused with. If we wanted to be Giddings or some other city, we could do that. And we could say, we don't need the overlay district. Let's just let it go. But we are all here because we are invested in what Navasota has to offer, and part of that is this overlay district, in my mind.
And Josh, I think I will have to research a bit. I know that our downtown fell under that exemption because it's registered as a historic location, the Central Business District standards. I don't know that the overlay district ever went through that registration process, so I'll have to look into that. But regardless, we can still regulate architectural standards.
Lupe, Sherry Gillespie, EDC. I spoke with the Texas Historical Commission, and because our downtown became on the National Register in 1985, we have that district, and we can extend the boundary to include Washington Avenue. And there are 6 properties along Washington Avenue that are already on the register, and there's also the LaSalle statue. And as a realtor, I see so many people that fall in love with our town, and that's part of it. And I just think that the focus shouldn't always be on trying to bring businesses there. We do want economic development. We do want the businesses coming. I think that needs to remain a part of the charm of the town and put the residents at ease, make it a part of the historic sites, and guide these businesses to the other locations that there are so many places on Highway 6 that could be developed.
I don't want to see the overlay district change. I want it to be stricter if we have to, the way you're talking about extend the historical thing, to Josh's, note, that's part of the union. I don't want to be Hempstead. I don't want to be Conroe. I want us to be Navasota. And, there's hundreds of acres out here on that end of LaSalle, and Highway 6, gonna be a 6-lane highway out there that all the football fans can stop and eat and contribute tax money to us, so, you know.
Yeah, and if I could, to add to EDC, the comment was made something about the other thoroughfares don't have enough traffic to warrant businesses. I think that's something that you guys are challenged with. I mean, we are asking you to help figure out how to develop those areas so that there is more traffic out there, that we do have other businesses. So while it may feel like it's a limit for us right now, people will come in and say, you know, Navasota has said, we're not messing with this house and on into town. What else do you have? And I feel like that's probably what you guys are doing already. But just to add that just because that's where all the traffic comes in, I don't know that every new business has to look at that one property and think, you know, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best for us.
And I also want to say, I hope we have to address this every year. You know, really. I mean, because it's that important to keeping this place the way it is.
Randy Peters.
I think that was our goal, was just everybody's on the same page now. So we know what page you're on. So now we know and staff knows we'll point them somewhere else. Let's do it again a year from now. Or whatever.
Randy Peters, I just want to reiterate what Councilman Stevens, Councilman Fultz, and the mayor have said. I've defended the overlay district since I've been on planning and zoning, and I will continue to defend it as long as I'm on here. That's part of the reason why I'm back here. My wife is the other half, but Navasota's changed for the better, and we don't need to be Hempstead or what's happened in Magnolia or Brenham. We have our charm, and we need to keep our charm, and I think that's why we attract so many people to move here, is because of the charm that we have that they can't find in other places.
You know, you go around Texas, I go all over Texas or other states, and you get highways that bypass the main town. And their little downtown dies because it's nothing. It is auto repairs or it's a fast food joint. It's not, they don't have anything unique like we have right out here, up and down this street. And that's, so, you know, had they done something a long time ago, you know, in Cleveland or wherever, you know, now their cities are out on their bypasses. Well, we work and keep that just like it is. And
get good people up here and good people out there that give a crap about it, then we'll continue to have this.
Loopy, John Lawler, Planning and Zoning. What is the next step if we wanted to extend the historic district out to Washington Avenue to make it more restrictive? I mean, there are members of the city council, I know there's members of our council that would be conducive to that. That's something that maybe need to be explored. I mean, that's a very good idea. That would make it, unfortunately for some, but it would send a clear signal that, hey, you're not going to be able to just waltz in here and do that, and it would be off the plate of some developers.
Staff can explore that.
Yeah, no, definitely gonna look at that and connect with Sherry about that.
I spoke to someone that said that's the easiest thing, is just extending the boundary. We shouldn't have any problem with that. It's just an application process. And I believe Kathy Wells is our Grimes County marker. And so we can work with her to get that.
Who controls that commission? The governor?
I believe so, yeah, it is a branch of I think the tourism, I think
Through the
that,
governor's office
Yeah.
or what?
THC's their own.
I know, but, okay.
We have the Two Rivers Foundation. I don't think,
Grimes County Historical. Yeah, THC is governor's office.
Governor's office?
Mm-hmm.
Dia Copeland, Planning and Zoning. Our police department of late has done a phenomenal job of keeping the 18-wheelers off of Washington Avenue. And if we allow more businesses and more things coming, into that area, we'll be backed up with 18-wheelers. So it's going to tear up our streets, it's going to tear up all those places along each side. And, so I think even as we think about expanding the overlay district, if we do, then we may need to talk a little bit about some of the 18-wheelers and the people who have to deliver things to the businesses as well, because, that's pretty mission critical to a lot of businesses.
Todd Wisner, Planning and Zoning. Certainly a takeaway for me this evening is I've got to come to some EDC meetings. I have, I don't know what businesses are approaching the city except for chats with Lupe or by the time they get to Planning and Zoning. So I really don't know, how much interest you have, how fast it drops off once they start hearing things like this. I do know that traffic is really important and on more than one level, right? Part of the people were upset about with the AutoZone was the traffic that it was going to do to the entrance of their neighborhood, and how Washington Avenue is already, 40-mile-an-hour street with, a single lane in the middle, and
Not anymore.
Not
anymore.
Train everybody on that one, man. But the difference between impulse buying and purpose buying and destination businesses and drive-by businesses are definitely, different characters, and what we choose to allow to place where matters when it comes to those kind of businesses. So I'll try and hide in the background on occasion. So.
Ethan Barczyk, Planning and Zoning. Councilmember Stevens brought up bypass in Hempstead. That's one of my ultimate fears, like when this flyover goes in. If they're going to develop so much on 105 going towards Plantersville, then why come to Navasota if you can get what you need, but then get on a flyover and not stop in Navasota? So to me, that's a fear 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that I don't want to experience. So I don't know the answer to that, but it's just a question that always lingers in my head. How do we prevent that from happening? And I don't know the answer.
Well, luckily, we're very deeply involved with TxDOT and the direction they're taking on all that development out there.
Sure, which is great, right? But
We're looking out for Navasota for sure.
But it's my understanding we don't really have that much control over what develops towards Plantersville, right? So
yeah,
that's the other half the problem. Like, we're doing our due diligence from TxDOT standpoint, but what happens? They start building strip malls down 105. I mean, That's my fear.
Well, I look at what we have down here is unique. I mean, it's, what we're talking about in here is preserving this area, and I don't think that thing out there is gonna, Eric, I don't believe it'll bother.
I think
People
that,
come down here, you know, I mean, unless you're living in Navasota or Brenham, or unless you live in Navasota, most people that come to this area are Bryan College Station and Washington County. So they're gonna keep coming here because they like to come here. It's a sweet place. And, you know, we're not trying to do downtown Houston here. I mean, we're limited. There's just 1 mile street here. Go to San Saba, Texas. Half the size of this city, population-wise, just drive right down 190, right through San Saba. They've done a real nice job of preserving their little downtown down there. It's not big, but I'm through there every couple of weeks. Nice area. It's not like Lampasas, which has turned into, you know, a G and, you know, auto stores and deer stand stores and all this other kind of stuff that's out there.
Debbie Hancock, I'm P&Z. Mr. Stevens, I've been here for over 60 years, and we did have downtown close up when the loop went in, and my brothers and best friends helped do that loop. And we had vacant buildings and dirty windows. And I look around and I know who's been here. And y'all remember how horrible it was. And there are people sitting in here now that helped to revitalize the downtown. So we did experience that disaster of a loop around the town, and we survived.
But that loop can't undo what's done here right now, in my belief.
I agree.
Because what's been created by people that's been here longer than me. I mean, I was driving through that intersection 55 years ago, and I know what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what it looked like 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, somebody cared and put all this together, you know, and it's good now.
And somebody fought. And that, as a member of the P&Z, that's all we're doing. We're trying to fight to keep it the way it is.
If we have to fight
And respect the people that come and tell us what they say, that lends so much credence to our decisions. We're listening. And it's not that we're opposed. I mean, I have a degree in marketing, for pity's sake. I don't want to see anything not come. But I want it to be proper, and I want it to be beneficial, and I want it to be pretty. And I want it to stay, not make an empty building. Empty buildings are a disaster of any town, no matter the size.
I agree.
Okay, I think we're kind of winding down. Is anyone else of one of the bodies like to speak?
Oh, Mayor, Council, and Board, I really appreciate y'all coming together. Great dialogue. So staff has got direction from you. One thing I want to make sure that the boards and the council and the public understands. So staff is not trying to bring development to that one corner. So you'll know, AutoZone, Taco Bell, and all that, they have reached out directly to that property owner. We work with Retail Coach, we work through the chamber, through the economic development portion of that, as well as attend multiple economic development conferences and other events. We tout what vacant buildings we have and what properties we have for sale. We do not try to bring in businesses in this area that council and P&Z has specifically said we do not want. So I want to make sure that the boards and commissions and council understands it's not staff driven. We provide what we have here. We do have, Lupe and myself have many conversations with, when AutoZone came in, we told them, good luck. So it's not staff positioned. So the other thing is...
Nor EDC or
Nor
retail coach.
EDC, nor P&Z. So want to make sure everybody understands that. The other piece is, great conversation again tonight. We were awarded a grant for a comprehensive plan. So we are going to be doing our comprehensive plan update. We will be providing this to our consultant that's working with this, because this is a piece of that comprehensive plan, looking at this area. So through that process, we might still have to have another conversation, and that conversation will be not an hour and 5 minutes long. It will be very short. We've already met. The public's already spoke. Here's what you need to move forward with. So I just want to make sure if you see that come up in the next 6 months, because they will be doing some community engagement sessions. They will be having public input, and so if you see that happening, we will make sure that we can convey that information directly to our consultants and let them know. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, boards.
Okay, seeing no one else, we will adjourn.